Hello and welcome to another edition of AI Impact Talk. My name is Tembekile Mkhototo, and today we're talking AI with someone from Absa. So when you think of banking, right? Many of us interact with multiple banks on the daily, almost every minute really. And it's interesting to see how many of them have had to basically adopt different strategies, introduce new products to not only maximize the way in which they can meet your demands as a customer, but also streamline their own protection in a time when we know that even artificial intelligence has exposed all of us to increased risk. And we're joined today by Dr. Thabiso Njongwe, the Chief Digital Transformation Officer with Absa. Doctor, welcome to AI Impact Talk. Good to have you with us on the program. So you've been speaking recently in the media, and one of the things you mentioned, and I took note of this, you spoke about three distinct categories of AI. Perhaps lay those out for us as the foundation for our conversation.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity and good afternoon. I think it is very important to create a framework by explaining these categories. When we build the systems, though, we can, mix them up. But just as a framework, it's always good. And the important thing is to understand that AI is actually a spectrum of machine intelligence capabilities. Mm-hmm. And so we have what we're calling now traditional AI. So that was predictive AI. What that does is it enables us to predict outcomes based on data that we have used to train the models. Mm-hmm. And then they create, understand patterns so that when we provide new data, then it uses those patterns that it understands to predict what the outcomes would be. Then the second one is Gen AI. So Gen AI allows us to really create and generate content.
Right.
And as it was made popular in 2022 with the release of ChatGPT, so most people are very much familiar with this. Gen AI, though, is very notorious for hallucinating. Very convincingly tell you something, but that something may not be necessarily true.
So fact-checking still important.
Yeah, so fact-checking is very, very important. Then the third category is Agentic AI.
Right.
So Agentic AI enable us to create systems that can act autonomously.
Okay.
Yes.
And for Absa then, would I be right in saying that because of the size of your operations and the demands of your customers, you ultimately have to use all three in some way?
Yeah, so we have used these capabilities from these categories in various aspects. The Agentic AI, we are being measured with that. For example, with Predictive AI, we have a number of models that we have created, and we're using these to help us understand customer insights so that we can have a better understanding of our customers and then we can serve them better. Also fraud detection. Fraud detection is nothing but looking at the patterns of how your behavior with your transactions, and when there's an anomaly, then, it creates an alert that, this is something different from a normal pattern. So we are using it for fraud detection. We're also using it for risk management, We have, for example, a tool that we call Next Best Product.
Okay.
So this tool is used by our frontline staff. And what it does, it actually helps them personalize the conversations with the customers, because it will suggest what are the products that may meet the need of the customer. So that way, a customer is not being told about products that are not quite relevant to them and what their needs are. And also for our frontline staff, it improves the conversations that they're having.
So you know who to speak to about each product, because ultimately the bankers are not a homogenous group, am I right?
Yes, definitely. Yes.
So with that in mind then, perhaps help us understand how that happens behind the scenes, and ultimately when we reach the front-facing level, the guy that I would speak to at a branch, the agent I would speak to on the phone, for instance, if I had a problem that I needed Absa to help solve?
So what's important to understand is that in the background, we talk AI, but the fuel for AI is data.
Right.
So data is the fuel. Therefore, the data that we need to use is data that is AI ready, so to speak. So it needs to be accurate, it needs to be governed, it needs to be secure, it needs also to protect the customers. So we use that to train for predictive models. We use that to train our models. And then for generative AI, for example, we've used so you see Abby, our mobile app.
Yes.
It is actually Gen AI powered now. And what that means is that when you ask questions, it's conversational. But because I had said earlier that Gen AI is notorious for hallucinating, so what we've done is to actually ground the answers that Abby does in the right data. And that grounding is very important for people to understand, because you can use techniques like RAG. It's a retrieval augmented generation.
Oh, okay.
Now, if you look at just the name of it explains, because it's saying direct the model to retrieve the data from a trusted source, right? And then it augments the response with something that is relevant and accurate. This is a way of ensuring that you are mitigating the hallucination.
And does that speak then to how deliberate you've also been in the adoption of agentic AI?
Yeah, so for agentic AI, what we have done is we are using the platforms that come with our enterprise software.
Right.
For example, we're using our CRM tool is Salesforce, and Salesforce has the Agentforce platform. And so by leveraging Agentforce and the agents there, it's much safer at this point, because those platforms actually come with robust security. And they have a trusted layer that ensures that the agents that are created, they are complying with specific, ethical guidelines. And those guardrails and guidelines actually do align with our own responsible use of AI principles that we have created.
And that I want to come then to the transformation part of your role, because that also requires you to bring along on the journey quite a lot of people.
Yes.
How are you approaching that?
So what we've done is we've created a COE, a Center of Excellence, that is an enablement COE. And the pillars that we are focusing on there is the pillar for value delivery. Because we are doing all of this not just for the sake of us. We're a business. We need to, make money. So what is the value that we are creating for our customers, and what is the value that we're creating for the business? And then another pillar, and now directly to your point, is the people pillar. Because the challenge with AI is that people can get, afraid that it's going to replace their jobs. But our approach is that AI actually is the tool that's going to enable us to truly have all the mundane and the drudgery, taken care by it, so that our people can then focus on more strategic, more strategic work.
But that requires then for them, where necessary, to then learn a new skill. Am I right?
Yes, definitely. I mean, definitely. So, for example, just in 2025, we have trained about a little over 5,000 of our colleagues. And even our leaders, senior executives, they are on the journey.
Are they also scared?
Yeah. I mean, it's human, you know, it's human because there is this, especially, generative AI. It's like a black box because we're using these models. These models have been trained mostly by scraping data from the internet.
Right.
And that data also, I don't know if you've used like ChatGPT or any of this.
I've been too afraid to try because, like some of your colleagues, it makes me nervous.
You should try it.
I don't know where it'll take me, doctor. That's my biggest fear.
But you know what? What you can do is you need to treat it as it's not a person, but it's like a collaborator. Challenge it, because you'll ask a question, and these we're calling them prompts. So you ask it, it provides you with the information. Now, if you're not an expert in an area, you may trust what it's saying, but please don't, because it may not be the right. Because it's also very great with language.
Because we've seen, what you're saying, Grok, for example, on X, how that has reminded us that these aren't perfect systems, right? Because that too has had to be, for want of a better word, tweaked by the people on the other end.
Yes, and this is, this point really brings us to something that I think, especially for the executives, it is really important to take note of. Early on, there was a saying that, software will, eat the world. And that was because that businesses were being disrupted by all, software and what software can do. And then the CEO of NVIDIA, who's making a lot of money right now with the GPUs. So the GPUs are the brains that are powering these AI systems.
Right.
And then he said, AI will eat software. But now some professors from MIT are saying, actually, philosophy is going to eat AI. And why is that? We recognize that ethics is very important. Ethics is a branch of philosophy.
Yes.
We recognize that ethics is important, but we're looking at ethics more from a risk mitigation. But what's important is that these models are trained with data, and then they are reinforced, so that's why I was asking if you have used it, because when you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, that's input, that is feedback that it uses as it learns, So the data that it's trained on and the reinforcement that it gets is actually a representation of a reality that the owners, the creators, are wanting to put out there. Right. And now what we need to be concerned about is that none of these big foundational models are actually trained in African data with, African languages.
We speak 11 official languages in this country, so that already presents a unique challenge, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So if, for example, now if I'm bringing it to business, when I'm saying it's very important that we should not just look at this as just an ethics, we need to be concerned about ethics, but what is the representation of the truth? What is the truth? So if in your organization there is not a shared understanding of what the organization stands for, what is true for that organization, as we leverage these tools, then there's going to be conflicting information that is put out there. So that's why, what is the truth? We need to understand it and have that shared understanding across the organization so that we don't end up with the situation that you just mentioned that happened last week.
And that takes me to what we were talking about earlier, right? The issue of training at all levels for business like Absa, because ultimately, two things here. You're living in an ever-changing world, so evolution is constant in the context of this conversation, but also systems are never 100% foolproof. So then the humans who run and operate the system then have to constantly themselves be upskilled to be able to detect
Yes.
fault, error, and know how
Yes.
to respond. Am I right?
Yes, definitely. And that's why we focus a lot on the training and ensuring that our colleagues are not afraid of this, but they see it as an opportunity to upskill themselves so that they remain relevant. I know there is some another saying that says people who use AI are going to, or people who don't use AI will be replaced by those who use AI. We don't want such replacement. So we want our people to have the confidence and understand that they can use these tools as thinking partners, because as I was saying to you, you need to challenge it. Because sometimes when you ask, why are you giving this information? Where did you get this information from? Then it will say, actually, I am a model. So it will actually get to the bottom that actually it is generalizing.
Right.
Yes.
So it'll show you
Yes.
where the flaw is perhaps in the response that it may have generated or even the credibility thereof.
So, some actually are very good at providing the references because then what you can do is then you can go to those, to the references just to validate the information that you're getting, which is why then for businesses it's very important to have that trusted source, and you redirect them to go to that trusted source so that they don't then hallucinate.
And it feels, just for your industry, you're in the banking space as Absa.
Yes.
It feels as though from a policy perspective, there's still a lot of gray areas that are yet to be filled in terms of policy, right? For South
Yes.
Africa, AI, governance, which you brought up earlier as well.
Yes.
Where are you seeing perhaps the greatest need to fill in the sort of blanks, and how do we tighten the space to make sure that we are protected, you as a company, me as a user, but also that the creativity and innovation is not necessarily stifled?
Yes. So with technology that is the development of is accelerating so much, it is to be expected that regulation is going to, need to catch up. However, we are dealing with people. We are banks, and our currency of exchange really is trust. So how do we ensure that as we use these technologies, trust is at the forefront? And one of the ways we do that is to ensure that in interacting with these tools, the human is very much in the loop. So the human will, the machine will make recommendations, but finally the judgment of what decisions get made then are made by a human, which is why I'm saying we are very measured with Agentic AI. So what organizations can do, and this is something that we are doing at Absa, we're working closely with, for example, the Financial Services Conduct Authority to understand what their thinking is on this. And we are influenced by thinking, and we are influencing their thinking. Just last week, there was the Absa conference, Banking Association of South Africa. They are also really driving conversations on ethics to make sure that how we use these technologies is going to protect the integrity of the financial institutions and also protect the individuals. So we cannot just sit back and say, oh, there is no regulation, but we need to be much more proactive. We have been proactive at Absa. We have created a responsible use of AI policy led by our compliance conduct team. And this was informed by looking, for example, the trailblazers in governance, AI governance, for example, that's, the EU. So the EU AI Act, OECD AI principles, even South Africa, we may not have a policy, but what we do have is like a framework on how we can use AI. So the ethical principles that are there, we who have integrated, they are part of the principles that we have in our AI policy.
So a great deal of ethical considerations as well, right?
Yes.
In the introduction of every new sort of product to market.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Because you, as I said, trust is very important. And for Absa, Absa, our brand, we are a human-centered, empathetic bank, and we recognize that every person has a story. They have journeys that their people are going through. So we need to be cognizant of the fact that in them, our customers choosing us to take care of their money. Money is something that is very personal.
We all need it. We
It's
need
a
more.
representation of dreams and aspirations and a sense of security. So we cannot take that lightly. So hence the real focus on ethics and making sure that the bank is protected and the customers are protected in the whole equation.
And as we end our conversation, the question of the season for us is, what does AI mean to you as a professional and as an individual?
So for me, AI is a great opportunity. I am working for a bank, but I am an educator at heart. And so this tool really represents an opportunity that democratizes access to information. Yes, you may challenge it, but for people who may think, okay, this is very far from them, see, look at your WhatsApp. There's actually a Gen AI integrated there. Llama is in there. So you can experiment with this. So it provides access to information. It provides access to opportunity. It's a new area, this emerging part of AI. So people can make sure that they equip themselves. And so that, because the opportunities are there. In fact, there's statistics that shows that for entrepreneurs and small businesses in the US, they are really using AI because it's an extra capacity for them. That because they're using, for example, the agents as the digital workers to augment the capacity they don't have. So there's a huge opportunity to leverage it. And for me, as a digital transformation person, the idea of having people truly have their capabilities and their potential unleashed. So for me, that's very important. So that's why I was saying also, I'm an educator because for me, it's about unleashing potential.
Yes, and
so
helping us to
do we
understand
Yes,
it.
how do we unleash the potential? So what tools can we leverage in order to unleash the potential so that as people, we can we can really do what is best for us and really shine.
Dr. Njongwe, it's been truly enlightening to speak to you, Dr. Thabiso Njongwe, the Chief Digital Transformation Officer at Absa, joining us on this edition of AI Impact Talk. We'll see you soon.